I'm waiting for it to start. Maybe I am a viewer, or I began to relate to the viewer a little bit too much. You don't have to have a lot of subscribers to have a artistic point of view. You don't need to have a lot of views to think you have an audience. I have a lot to say, I thought. So I'm waiting for it to start. I thought maybe I will start with the title, talking about the title. The camera is here, but I don't look at the camera, I look at the face. I watch myself with the viewer. As it happens, I look into the mirror. In the audience, I see myself. Or in myself, I see the audience. Which isn't the point of the exercise. But it's an aspect of what's happening. There was a lot to say today. It will happen. It will happen. I thought about starting by talking about the title. The title, I thought, maybe the name of the name of what's happening, or the word which defines what's happening, the phrase that defines what's happening, the name, the word of which this is the definition. Sorry. Mediocrity, beauty, or maybe beautiful, or ugly. The soul, the ego, courage, cowardice, good and evil. And those, the essence of what the title means, the essence of the title is mediocrity on the one side, as the eye, as the perspective, as the point of view that faces beauty, ugly, so a way of looking at beauty as something observed by mediocrity. Mediocrity is Mediocrity is to play a role, is to control someone else on the behalf of the person with power. Mediocrity is to put yourself in the middle of the people who have no power and the people who have power. Does that make sense? I hope it makes sense. And mediocrity is different from inverting power. You see? It's a way of experiencing the complexities of life from the outside, but not truly from the outside. Or what I just said makes this more confusing. This will not pass as a good video. I like to think that the last video was good, but I'm starting to have a feeling that this video isn't working. I don't have the same level of belief in this video, but I will try. And I feel I have time. I have a lot of time to sit here. The viewer doesn't, but I think, you know, in a way they say you shouldn't relate. You shouldn't totally ignore what the viewer needs. And at the same time, you should avoid thinking what the viewer needs. There's a balance, you know. You have to satisfy people, and at the same time, you shouldn't really try too hard to satisfy people. That's okay. That's okay. That's okay. I'm just trying to get better at this. My hair is falling. Wait. Not sure if that makes sense. Mediocrity. Mediocrity is such an important thing for so many people, to be afraid of mediocrity. It's funny. Because, mediocrity it has a social application, right? It has a social version. And that version means being mediocre is a kind of failure to live up to the expectation. And I'm starting to see there's always a connection between what it is I want to talk about and the experience of talking about it. And in this case, there is a mediocrity in myself, which I want to talk about. And so, expectations. As far as people think about mediocrity, they think about it as falling within a certain strata of people who achieve, a certain amount within the system. And that's the social application. But the real meaning and mediocre, isn't a name of the strata. When it gets applied, that's the best people can do. But the word itself has a real nuance to it. When somebody is mediocre, they're not just bad at what they do. It's a mentality. It's a way of relating to other people. It's a way of viewing the thing you're doing. And like I said, it's a role. It's to see what you're doing as a role that places you between those without power and those with power. And every position in society, in a society that has people who are dominant and those who are not dominant, or those who are dominated, every society will have its positions, have its roles, its people, also be mediocre, right? And what I mean by this is teachers. Take teachers, for instance, right? Now, you can imagine a wonderful teacher, and let's do that. A wonderful teacher might be somebody who might be someone who I'm not sure. But I can tell you what a mediocre teacher does. And a mediocre teacher prepares the students for a life of subjugation. And that subjugation might not be horrific. It might not involve, horrible labor and all that. But it's just a different kind of subjugation involving, working for a system that doesn't really give a shit about the people, like all systems in a way. And, a system which doesn't have an inherent meaning, and whose meaning is artificial, whose meaning is invented for the health of the system rather than the people who belong to it. You prepare students for that kind of life, right? And that's the mediocre teacher. They serve as the mediator of the people who benefit from the system, the people who make money from the health of the system, not the people of the system, who need labor, who need a certain kind of laborer, and the people without power, and and so the mediocre teacher, I guess, is somebody who creates laborers that keep people happy. And when I say happy, there's a dark meaning to that, the sort of quiet, compromised, suppressed content, unwilling to fight for better. The labor who gives to the people insofar as it keeps them content, while bringing real benefit to the system and the people who benefit the most from the system, who benefit from the system itself and not the happiness of the people, right? And that's the mediocre teacher. Now you might be able to say, well, the opposite of that is the exceptional teacher. Somebody who teaches people how to make somebody truly happy. And how do you do that? That is a difficult question. I mean, I can't even imagine what would an exceptional teacher really say. I mean, I feel like all teachers are so mediocre. I'm trying to think of what it would be like to show up to a class where the people teaching the class are not simply producing a labor, And maybe a teacher, somebody who truly, who isn't mediocre, you might say, would teach us a student something else, right? Who isn't just, so why is it that teachers so often teach stuff that seems useless? Because there is this belief that what the world needs, at least in part, is intellectual labor, right? And what that really means, that's horrible. You will suffer if you hear what I say, but what that really means is, the kind of labor that the world really needs, so it's thought, is labor which serves the health of the system and not the people of the system. And that's intellectual labor. That's all intellectual labor. Every instance of intellectual labor is that. It's labor that manipulates the minds of people so as to keep them content, so as to make them feel, to reduce their animosity, reduce their tension, reduce their discomfort, so as to provide them a sense of security and not security itself. That is intellectual labor, because it is designed. The artificial world is designed, and that is to say that it's thought up. We create the world so that it provides a sense of security rather than security itself. And that is thought up. And that is all intellectual labor, and everything that anyone does nowadays has at its core, you might argue, intellectual labor. Everyone who works has to be mindful, intelligent about how to create a sense of security for other people rather than the real security. And so you might ask, why is it that teaching so often just trains you to study stuff that doesn't have anything to do with you? Well, it's because education really is supposed to provide you with the tools to learn how to provide people with an artificial security, with an artificial feeling of well-being, with an artificial well-being. And anyway, I want to get to the other stuff. I need to crack my back. Oh, it's not that bad. Oh, it's pretty bad. But there's something I wanted to really say. Something about beauty, ugliness, courage, cowardice, the ego, the soul, as words which have taken on mediocre meanings. And that maybe even we're doomed to take on those mediocre meanings, or they are fake words. Oh, there are words that are fake. Words that have that if they have a designator, referent, the thing to which a word is applied. If you are to give those words a meaning, you would need to look through the lens of the person who has strayed from reality. That those words only have a meaning insofar as you are willing to accept a way of living which deviates from reality. And those words serve that disconnection. Those dualities serve those disconnections. But also that in a recognition of the falseness of those words, something else emerges. Those words don't simply fade into oblivion. They don't simply stay like black holes in the language, but rather they take on a different direction. But what? I'm not quite sure what I mean. Good, evil, ugly, beautiful. Well, let's start with ugly and beautiful. I love those words. I love those words. They've taken on a meaning. Oh, wow. You know, nothing could be more important than the word beautiful. And what is it that's beautiful? It's that single drop of water. The voice of somebody. It's the eye of the needle. Something like a slice of reality which is so small but takes on but that changes the meaning of everything else. When you forgot water and you only know your own thirst, and you have a drop of water touch your tongue, suddenly the world changes around you. Everything. There's no limitation to what changes at that single drop of water. And yet it's so small. And its smallness isn't arbitrary either. It's not about the first. It's not about it's about a single truth. It's about the truth and not the water itself. It's about the truth of water and not the water itself. You see? And the same with beauty, ugliness. Ugliness is the dirt, maybe. You know, if we're something like that, if you put dirt in your mouth, it's like that. Everything might change. I'm not sure how to describe it actually, but it's the reflection, the opposite of beauty, you know, ugliness. I'm not sure. But that's the way that beauty and ugliness have taken on their own direction. You know? That's not what beauty and ugliness really mean. I mean, that's not the way people talk about it. And when people talk about what's beautiful and what's ugly, they're really talking about... I don't even remember exactly, but there's a sort of mediocre meaning to it. A mediocre shade, you might call it. And that mediocre shade may be that some people are well, let's just revisit our framework and we'll find out. So mediocrity is the role between the people without power and the people who have power. And when you are in the middle, there are two things that can happen. One, your role is to enforce the power, right? The people who enforce the power are the people who suppress, the people who inspire fear. Anxiety, not fear, anxiety. Because, we need to talk about emotions later. We do. There's that. But, yes, we'll figure that out. Okay. So, think of a police officer, right? Now, you might say you could look at a police officer in two different ways. One, they're there to protect the people, and one, they're there to suppress the people, right? People commonly hold one of these two feelings about the police. Maybe we shouldn't call them feelings yet. But they have that sense about the police, one way or the other. And you might say that is it because the police are either ugly or beautiful. The police are either ugly or beautiful. They're either good or courageous. Good or bad. They're either courageous or cowardly. But you can see that these two things are not quite opposites. It's a strange kind of opposite. Because if, let's say, that what it means to be bad is to be downward, the power is going downward, right? From those who have power to those who don't. And the people in the middle are simply adding an oomph, a bite. They're additional to that power. They suppress. They help suppress. They install the cameras. They install they beat the people who speak up, right? The opposite of that is not somebody who provides health care. You see, the opposite of that is not just somebody who is friendly, who ameliorates the problems, who helps build some compromise between those who have no power and those who have power. You see, the opposite of that is somebody who pushes power in the other direction. Right? So heroes are people who transcend mediocrity. Villains are a sort of hero in that sense. The people who are villains or heroes, they are outstanding individuals. They don't find the role, rather they go beyond it, right? They go beyond the complacency, the self-satisfaction in finding an alliance with those who have power. And the villain is somebody who can't find that comfort. The hero is the person who chooses not to. Let's take Batman, for example. Batman is a story about the hero and the villain. It's so clear, straightforward. It's almost the exact ideological display of the heroes and villains. On the one hand, Batman is somebody who had the choice to just be one of the rich people. They had the choice to simply benefit from the power, preserve the status quo, but instead they choose to go beyond that, to truly relate to other people by protecting those who are under attack. Right? Batman is somebody who truly relates to other people, who loves other people, despite the fact that he has every opportunity to find his place among the rich, benefit from his wealth, benefit from his status, and he chooses no. Right? Who is Joker? Joker is somebody who just goddamn cannot. I mean, he's beaten from childhood. You know, that guy, he is the epitome of an unfortunate soul. Right? And so he just cannot find a role in this society. There would be no satisfaction at all in just serving the status quo. He wants to burn the whole status quo down, but in that way, he also transcends it, right? And the reason we look at villains, and we actually want the villain to be human. We want the villain to be empathetic. I mean, Joker, what is that movie we just saw recently? It's a movie about loneliness, despair, about mental health. You know, that movie wants you to feel sorry, right, for that character. And it's because that character is a sort of human too. And what it means to be human in a world of mediocrity is to simply relate to another human being, to not just serve the system, to not just act as a vessel of somebody else's power, right? And so, both Batman and the Joker transcended the status quo, or rather transcended their status as somebody who would normally be the status quo due to their circumstance, sure, but, well, circumstance is part of who we are. And, yeah. Heroes and villains. And you know, people who are mediocre, they want to, they like the idea of heroes and villains in their world. It gives a sort of option, another layer, I suppose. I'm not sure, but people love these movies. They love to see Batman, who is the hero. They love to see that, and I suppose that probably the reason they love it is because it gives them a reflection of what they are not. It helps them to feel recognized, even if it's in the recognition of who they are not. You know, and there are probably a lot of people who confuse who Batman is. They think Batman is the symbol of somebody who is simply just good, somebody who uses their mediocre position in order to do good, right? Batman is not a police. Batman is not somebody who has a role as a police officer. That we can agree on. He is much more than that, right? You know, and the Joker is not just a symbol of who we should not be either. You know, the Joker is not somebody who I don't really know why people love Batman, but I don't know. I think every mediocre person has some latent desire to be a hero, some latent desire to be a villain. They have it speaks to them in a way that other things which are common do not, and that's probably why, I'm not sure. Well, whatever. And then what else? What are these other dualities? I mean, I don't know. No, I don't know. What are these other dualities I talked about? Courage and cowardice is like this, okay? There's that downward power, right? And courage is a way to look up at the master, at the person who really has power, and to say, I think you should control the people differently. Let me give you an example. Let's say you have a king and they're abusing the peasant people, right? Now somebody comes along and says, hey you, we don't want to be controlled like this. You're working us too much, right? A courageous person is somebody who says, we demand labor laws. And it's to say, look, I'm mediocre. I'm between you, the person who has power, and the person who has no power. And I'm going to tell you that if you really want to make this a good system, if you really want to keep the status quo, the best thing you can do is to change the way that you're controlling these people. Now, I want you to continue to have that control. I'm still there. I'm still on your side. There's still this downward movement, but I'm facing you just enough that I can face downwards better. I can control better. And cowardice is somebody who is unwilling to look up at all, who simply obeys 100% mindlessly. Cowardice is somebody who observes the suffering of the people down below, and they don't do anything about it, even though that control is not optimal, even though that control is, unsustainable. Actually, they don't even improve the system. They don't care about the people down below, and they also don't care about the people up above. They just mindlessly carry out the control. You see? And there was then I want to talk about two other things. And okay, so there was, I need to get better at this maybe. And there was, oh god. And there was inversion. I talked about this the last video, where I say that people are abusing somebody, or somebody abuses somebody, and then that person inverts the abuse. Right? Now, is this the same thing as mediocrity? Is this inversion the same as being mediocre? And I had this idea that for the reason I wanted to make this video, I think, is because I wanted to say that no, it's not. That inverting power isn't the same as being mediocre. That in some way, but maybe it is. See, I'm not sure. So let's say somebody abuses somebody else, and then they go and abuse somebody else, and they neutralize that problem. You see, I think they are the same. I think the inversion is the same. Because, okay, let me put it this way, right? In order to receive the abuse without suffering dramatically, you need to agree with the abuser, right? In order to agree with the abuser, you have to carry out those very same actions. Mediocrity is a step beyond that. It's in the same vein, but it's a development, an establishment of that inversion. You see? So at first I received something horrible, I'm abused. And then I abuse somebody else because now I'm one with the abuser, right? And the reason I'm one with the abuser is so that I don't have to suffer through that abuse. I don't have to feel it. Because I agree with them, I don't have to feel that anything is wrong. You see? Now the establishment is, I can't really be one with the abuser. I'm not the one with the same benefits, I don't have the same interests, I don't have the same perspective as them necessarily. But I can play a part in the system to which they are interested, right? I can feed into their interests. Say they abused me because they have some self-esteem problems. Well, I can agree with their self-esteem problems, and in doing so, I can also take on a role in helping their self-esteem. I can suck up to them, right? Now I have a different role. I'm not the person with the self-esteem problems, but I agree with their system of shame and whatever, and then I go and I help to spread those self-esteem problems to someone else. Let me put it in a better way, because there's a reason I say that. There's somebody I'm thinking about. But it may not be very clear. You have a system of abuse, okay? Somebody abuses you so that they can get something out of you, right? They don't care about your feelings. And then you agree. And the reason you agree is so that you don't have to feel bad. We went over that, okay? And let's put it give it a little bit more specificity. Somebody wanted money, so they used you. They used your body, right? They wanted money, and they used your body as labor in order to get that money, right? That's a form of abuse. Now, what happens? You say, yes, money is that valuable. It's more valuable than my body. I agree with this system. And I so agree with this system that now I need to go and I need to defend this way of looking at life. I need to go and explain to the people who value their own body over money, that actually they're wrong. And then I'm going to sell their body in order to make money for myself, or to make money for the people who, for the people who abused me the first time. Do you see what I mean? And so it's an establishment. You find your place near the person. You're not quite yet one with the abuser, the one with power, but you are near them. There's a difference, but that difference is imperceivable. It isn't felt. You're still at heart one with them, but your role has taken on a bit of nuance. You're not quite the same. And there was something about emotions that I wanted to talk about, and then I won't finish my video. Emotions are something that are passed forward. Let me give you an example. Happiness is something you share with other people. Anger means that somebody did something wrong to you, and now you have to change the way somebody else is doing something. Sadness means that you need to separate yourself from somebody else. Disgust means, well, I'm not quite sure about all of this, but really emotion is a way to invert what other people How? I am getting tired. Emotions mean change. They demand change. There's something that needs to be expelled. If you're happy, you need to share that. But what that really means is you need to make somebody else happy. And so you can see that it's really being passed down a line. That the happiness didn't originate with you, it originated with the person above you. The sadness, the same. But it isn't quite, in its original form, it isn't necessarily sadness. It's not that sadness is being handed around from person to person to person. But what it originally is, there's something here, but maybe I will finish this in a different